I am here with special guests, Jessica Brown and Mark Sabrion. We are here for episode 8 of our continued series of the Restored Church of God. Sometimes we say RCG for short. Thank you guys for being here today. Jessica, could you just tell us a little bit about your background, where you grew up, family, religion?
Yes, so I grew up like in a Christian household.
Okay.
My parents were both, well, my mother primarily, but my dad also attended. They were in the Worldwide Church of God in the late 80s, early 90s.
Okay.
So I was born in 1988. I don't really remember much of my time in the WCG. I vaguely remember like sitting on the floor, like coloring and, just playing with toys, that sort of thing. But I don't really remember it. I do remember my mom saying that, we weren't going to attend anymore because things were changing. So after that, we kind of just, went home, and I didn't really think much about religion or,
Okay.
I like in my teens, I kind of became agnostic.
Okay.
So I didn't really care much about, worshiping God. Like it's like I knew he existed, but I just kind of wanted to do my own thing.
Now, the church that your parents attended, where was that at? Where was that church at?
That was in Columbus, Ohio.
Okay. And for those to refresh you, the Worldwide Church of God was the original, ran by Herbert Armstrong. And granted, it was based in California, correct, Mark?
Yes.
They had several splinters throughout the United States and throughout the world. So where you went was one of the offshoots that was with the Worldwide Church of God.
So I actually, like my parents actually attended with Worldwide Church of God, and then we went after that. RCG, Restored Church of God, is an offshoot of the Worldwide Church of God.
Now, when did you discover the Restored Church of God? Like, what drew you to them?
So, starting in my early 20s, like I went through this phase where I was just trying to find the meaning of life. I was depressed and, just looking for answers because I kind of was just lost, spiritually speaking. So my mom started like sending me articles to The Real Truth. She had discovered the Restored Church of God online. I'm not sure how, but I guess through a Google search. And she started sending me articles. So I started reading them, but it didn't really like catch my interest until maybe age 23. And that was in January of 2012. It was like, okay, this is actually, this is interesting because I've never heard these things before. Like you don't hear them in a traditional church. So I wanted to read more and, learn for myself. Like, I just wanted to find God at that point because I was just kind of tired of living, feeling like, my life was empty and meaningless. So,
Mark, could you clarify at 2012, what was out there? Restored Church of God was putting out videos and materials?
The Worldwide, for context, that Jessica was in the Worldwide Church of God under Herbert W. Armstrong. He died in 1986, and then the leaders that took over the church changed all the doctrines as far as holy days, the Sabbath, clean and unclean foods, among other things.
Okay.
And so what happened was there was an exodus over the course of years until 1995, 96, when other churches began to splinter off. So when you talk about the splinters, you're talking about other churches. David C. Pack left the Global Church of God and created the Restored Church of God in 1999. So the Restored Church of God began in 1999. I joined in 2012, and by that time, the World to Come program was getting pretty big on YouTube. They were also starting to go on international television. A lot of books and booklets that Herbert W. Armstrong and the Worldwide Church of God wrote. David Pack spent many years with his team rewriting the literature so that people who went to Worldwide could find things that were very similar after, they're trying to find another church to land. So when Jessica says that she felt lost, it was the difference between, and you can correct me, Worldwide Church of God falling apart and then coming into Restored.
Right. And for me, just because I don't really remember my days in the Worldwide Church of God very well, it's like, for me, it was like I was coming into something completely new when I joined the Restored Church of God. It was these were things that I really hadn't heard before, because like growing up, my mom would talk to me a little bit about it, but I wouldn't I wouldn't really retain it in my mind. It was just like, this again. But, eventually it was just, when like I started reading and studying on my own, I'm like, oh, that's what she meant by that.
So what was it like for you at the beginning with the Restored Church of God?
So in the beginning, it's kind of like, you have this little fire and you just want to read everything, soak up what you're learning. I used to stay up all night reading their literature, watching their videos, and I was just like, I couldn't get enough of it. It was so exciting to actually know, like, wow, I actually understand the Bible now. It makes sense. Everything's crystal clear. And it was just a really eye-opening moment for me. And like to this day, I look back on that and it's just like, wow, that's amazing. How much understanding I was able to, gather within that short period of time.
Now, did your parents become members of Restored Church of God?
Very briefly, yes.
Okay.
For 3 months.
For 3 months? Okay. And then when did you start having concerns in the Restored Church of God?
So I think it actually started very early, but like because I was so new, I just thought, well, we're all imperfect humans. I'm not going to question things, question how things are done. So, I just kind of dismissed it as, well, like these are darts, the fiery darts of Satan trying to come at me. So I didn't question it. It wasn't until 2019 that I actually started to become a lot more uncomfortable with the direction things were going in. And that was the year that the prophetic teachings really started to ramp up, and when David C. Pack started setting dates at a more frequent rate, so to speak.
Okay. Mark, could you please explain real quick what she described as the prophetic dates sermons starting?
Sure. David C. Pack, I can only second her notion about the first impression of RCG. Neither one of us would have joined if we had thought, oh, we're going to be before a false prophet. Never would have done that. But at the time, it was only internal to him, his kind of prophetic changes where he announced himself as an apostle and announced himself as Joshua, the high priest of Zechariah, which was, to me, was like, that was just kind of in the margins, didn't mean anything. But starting in 2015, he began a prophetic series called it was originally called The Greatest Story Never Told. And it was going to be 4 parts, and then it was going to be 7 parts, and then it was going to be 12 parts. And as of last week, it's up to 403 parts. And so what Jessica's referring to, beginning in 2019, and you'll probably talk about the Night Watch, David Pack started declaring dates for approximations of when Jesus Christ was going to return. The first time he did that was in 2012, announcing that in August of 2013, Jesus Christ was going to return on the Hebrew month of Elul to the Wadsworth campus and arrive in Wadsworth, Ohio. And of course, that didn't come to pass. And so as the years rolled on, he began setting dates.
Okay.
So that brings us up to what Jessica is referring to.
Now, were you able to talk to anybody in the church, ministers, anybody, about your concerns that you were having?
So, we weren't technically supposed to talk to members about, concerns regarding doctrine or teachings, because it would be seen as sowing division. So, I almost never did that. There was one time I did, and I quickly learned I had to keep my mouth shut because it led to me getting questioned on my belief. Did I really believe, David C. Pack was an apostle? Did I believe he was Elijah?
Okay.
That sort of thing. So I was like,
So were you ever told that you cannot discuss with other members or question to the ministers?
So we were told in sermons not to talk about, like if we had disagreements, like towards the prophecy series, we were told not to talk about it with members, just with the ministry.
Okay. Now, you told me a brief story about somebody that was having questions or issues, and you encouraged them to go talk to the minister, but the minister apparently didn't like it.
Yeah, so that was in 2013.
Okay.
At the Feast of Tabernacles that year.
Okay.
I don't really remember all of the, back details, but basically this minister was mistreating her. And she was distraught about it, at a dinner table, just kind of pouring her heart out. And I realized very quickly that, at that moment, members aren't supposed to talk about their concerns with each other. You got to go through the ministers only. And I was just like, okay,
you were just trying to console her and help.
Right. I was like, I did not know that.
Okay.
I got in trouble, and that was pretty traumatic for me at the time.
Wait, I don't think I heard this story. It's like, how did you get in trouble, and how did the person react? Like, tell more about that story.
So what happened was, this minister, again, was apparently mistreating this lady, saying things about her that were, not good. I don't remember all the particulars, but, she was a new member, and she didn't understand that, you weren't supposed to go to other members and talk about those things. I didn't either. So, I was being new. I thought I was doing the right thing, gonna, try and help her. I encouraged her to talk with the minister, and, she was like, oh, will you come with me? I'm nervous. I said, okay, I can do that. So,
that's sweet. Yeah.
Right. So I did that, and quickly, after the fact that, after she was told, what she needed to be told, I guess, I was told, oh, one shouldn't, go to the members, talk about that. You shouldn't have an opinion of the ministry. And it was like, nobody's ever told me this. So it's kind of like when you go through things in RCG, you kind of find out the hard way that, that some things you just don't do, unfortunately. And
so basically somebody was just having issues. You talked to them, you encouraged them to go to a minister. They asked you to go with them as, a support system, and you pretty much was told that was uncalled for.
Right, exactly.
So when you finally did voice your concerns to the ministry, what was their reaction? What did they say?
Concerns as in towards prophecy, or just in general?
In general, prophecies and how you were feeling.
So the times I did voice my concerns, usually they would listen, but when it came to prophecy and I started to, here and there talk about, I don't know what to think of this, and, I'm not sure what God is doing. And it was just kind of a don't worry about it response. It's just, focus on building your character, serving others, things like that. It was just just ignore it. Don't even think about it.
Now, at this time that you were going to Restored Church of God, were you still living around your parents in Columbus area?
Yes. So I started out in the field, as they call it. I attended with the Dayton congregation. To begin with, and I was there all the way until 2019 of April, when I applied for a job transfer, and I was able to move up here as a result of it. So.
Now, you told me that their reaction for you to transfer was just to stay where you're at?
Initially, I was told not to move to headquarters, over and over again by the ministry, and I didn't understand why. I was never given a reason. So, I just thought, well, it's a closed door. Maybe I'm not meant to be there or something. But
well, how was all this on your mental health? I mean, you are attending there. They're telling you not to move. You're trying to do things for your life, and then you finally get here. And was it more intense once you physically was here? Actually,
I would say it became easier. because I was around a lot of people that, you know, were good friends, and,
Yeah.
you know, I felt like I had a stronger support system out here, you know, and I just, you know, I felt like this is where I belong, and this is where God wanted me to be. So for me, it was like, it was easier being out here than out in the field, because I was more isolated. That's not saying out in the field wasn't,
Yes.
you know, there were some wonderful people out there, but it was more difficult because we were more scattered.
Wait,
Now-
how did you manage going from ministry says don't move out here
Yeah.
to actually moving out here and feeling it was easier?
Well, I was working at Amazon at the time, and they were looking for people to, you know, start working in their new building in Cleveland. So
Oh, okay.
I applied, and it was just like, boom, you know, I got accepted immediately. And then I was like, well, I need to find an apartment. Immediately got the apartment too. So I was like, oh, well, I guess I'm moving to Wadsworth. So it was like, I just, you know, told my minister, like, well, I got this job opportunity at Amazon in Cleveland, so I guess I'm going to be moving to headquarters. And that's how it happened. And, you know,
Everything just worked out the way it needed
yeah,
to
it
be
just,
for you.
I mean, it just worked out. And, you know, he was like, that's wonderful. So, you know, at that point, there was no opposition. And this was a different minister, too. So that was.
Now, as time went on with the series that they continued, and how was that on you for your overall being, your mental health, going through this and talking to several past members and things? It was very hard.
It was, because, like, you deep and down inside, you want it to actually happen. And it's just, you know, when it didn't, it just kind of left you with this, wow, you know, what's happening? And, you know, also just the fact that people were, like, kind of stopping their plans and, you know, just saying, well, Christ is coming back tomorrow. What's the point of doing this or that? It would give me a guilty conscience, like, oh, am I, you know, a heathen unbeliever for, you know, trying to, you know, plan ahead and look to the future, you know, like, be wise in my, you know, my day-to-day doings. So it was hard, and it became stressful, because it got to the point where it was like, you know, I'm reading the scriptures and I'm seeing the scriptures that, you know, talk about false prophets and how, you know, a man who sets a date, you know, if he sets a date and it doesn't come to pass, then that's the thing that the Lord has not spoken. So I started to question, like, is God really speaking through David C. Pack or not? I just felt, you know, confused, and it was stressful, because I didn't want to leave, you know, RCG, but at the same time, I was starting to think I may end up having to do this, because I can't, you know.
Now, didn't you say at some point that you did leave for a brief moment?
Yes, that was in July of 2019.
Okay.
And that was more for personal issues.
Okay.
It wasn't anything, you know, in regards to prophecy, even though I did feel a little uncomfortable with it at the time, because prior to that, you know, prior to me temporarily leaving that year, we had went through what was called the night watch. And that was where we were supposed to stay up all night, you know, waiting for Jesus Christ to come back.
Okay.
And I had to work that night. I worked night shift, so I was going to be up anyway.
Okay.
But I just remember going to work and just feeling just so distraught, and I mean crying at my workstation, because I was thinking, wow, I'm gonna clock out, and everyone I love and care about is gonna be gone. Like, they're gonna be taken, I'm gonna be left. So it was like a very scary moment for me. And then, of course, you know, when it didn't happen, it was like this sigh of relief. It's like, you know, wow, what did we just go through here?
Now, did you have fears of leaving?
Yes, I was afraid that, like, if I leave, I'm going to lose God's spirit, I'm going to be cursed, bad things are going to happen to me, you know, and then, you know, of course, everyone, like, kind of just going silent on you when you leave. That's what happens. It's just, you know, the members don't contact those who have left. So it was kind of like, well, I'm going to be alone again, you know, like I was in 2019. And I was just thinking, I don't want to go through it again. But when it came down to it, I just, like, I had to really tell myself, do I care what people think or do I care what God thinks? And I just finally concluded, I'm like, I got to put God first. So.
And you told me that you ended up reading up a lot to justify how you were feeling. And what was some of the things that you read that helped you?
So I started out just reading a bunch of basic foundational scriptures on the office of prophets, the characteristics of false prophets. And when I would read these scriptures, like I would just see how they were just pretty much condemning, David C. Pack's teachings. And I'm just sitting here reading through this like, wow, I think God's trying to tell me something here. Like I need to, really start. Because one problem I did have, like as the prophecy series was ongoing, is I really wouldn't read my Bible because I was so confused by what was being taught. I just did not even want to go into the scriptures anymore and read it because I just thought, wow, if this is what God is, I don't know if I want to really serve him like that subconsciously. That's what I was thinking. I didn't like outright say that, but it just was like, it was hard for me spiritually speaking. My relationship with God really suffered as a result.
Now you look like an extremely healthy person, but you said at one point that it was affecting your blood pressure.
Yeah. So it started affecting my health to the point where I was waking up feeling just sick and not really able to function well. I've always had, issues with my health and such, but it was like it's got to the point where it's really bad. And then one day I went to the dentist and they took my blood pressure, like I guess it's like routine to do that before like a filling. And they said it was like 150 over like 100 or something like that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's not normal for me. So they retook it and it came back equally as high. It was like 148 or something, like over 90 or something like that. So it was like.
But you knew.
Yeah, I knew exactly why like it was happening. I was like, this is because of the stress, I've been going through.
Yeah.
As a result of this prosthetic confusion and, not being able to talk about it and just feeling so distraught and confused by everything. So I just was like, this is not only affecting my physical health, this is affecting me spiritually too. And it's like, I gotta do something.
Now, you said that, your family was asking you to leave at one point and you stayed in. When you finally decided to exit, what was the church's response to you?
So when I did decide to exit, I sent an email to the headquarters pastor, explaining to him, my decision. And the response was, it's like, if you leave, you're going to detach yourself from the body. You're going to lose God's spirit at some point. You see the condition of the other groups out there. So why would, kind of like, why would you want to leave?
Okay.
Where, everything, where the truth is. But the thing is, it's like the truth isn't there anymore. It's kind of a corrupt version, of what we once knew. So I, responded back with, several scriptures that I had been studying. And then I also quoted page 51 of David C. Pack's book, Is That Prophet Alive Today? The Rise of False Prophets. Page 51 was actually what solidified my decision to just say, I'm done. I can't do it anymore.
Okay.
I read that and I was like actually terrified because I felt like I was following this man that's just, totally, opposite of what God wants us to follow. And I took it seriously because I'm like, God says, you don't go after false prophets. It's in the Bible. It's all throughout the Bible. So it's
Did they respond back to that email that you sent back with the passages? No, not at all. And did anybody after you left reach out to you at all?
A few reached out just in general. They didn't know I was gone. But, of course, when you tell them, hey, I'm not there anymore, silence. So, a few did find out.
Now, you eventually ended up writing, publishing your exit story that you gave to Restored Church of God. Did you know about Mark's blog, which is on Facebook, and he has a website? Did you know about any of that beforehand?
So I discovered Mark's blog right around the time it launched, because I had seen y'all's interview. I think it was in May.
Okay.
Yeah. And I didn't really watch the whole thing at the time. I just remember thinking, he's probably a disgruntled, I just kind of skimmed through it. But I watched it again, and I was listening carefully to it, and I'm like, he's expressing the exact same, concerns I've been having all this time, like for all these years, and I just, at that point, I started, following, the interviews more closely. And then that's when I discovered, later discovered his website. And, from there, it was just like, I've been thinking the same thing too.
So, Mark, could you explain exactly your website for those that don't know about it and the purpose of it?
Sure. So you and I began our journey together in May of this year, 2022, and then by the time June rolled around, I realized I needed to have my own website, so I created 𝑒𝑥rcg.org, and that URL cost me $12. It was the best $12 I ever spent. Signed up with Squarespace and put a website together, and it's been going strong ever since. And that website's purpose really is to be a consolidated place of information for all things RCG. There were other websites out there that were more Church of God landscape, LCG, PCG, United, 𝐻OGW, blah, blah, blah. People who know what those are know what those are. But those are all the other splinter groups. But I wanted to focus on Restored Church of God because that's where I came from. I attended from 2012 to 2021. And you left this year in August?
August 15th.
2022. And I wanted to have a place where people, if they wanted to be, who were in Restored, if they wanted to read about what the ministry is not telling them, or pointing out that what they're hearing and seeing is not deceiving them, their eyes aren't lying to them. I would quote David C. Pack with his own words, because I remember sitting in services going, wow, this sounds so familiar. I look in my Bible in the margin. It's like, wow, we covered this already, and yet he's telling us we've never heard this before. So for my own edification, I started compiling all the different things that he had said in the past, and I've been writing articles and putting those quotes up on the website. And so Jessica could hear, or anybody in our interviews, things that I was talking about, but also pointing out the things that David C. Pack has been teaching, and it's been going on for a long time. Because once you see things listed out, like, wow, didn't we cover Christmas before? Oh yeah, he said this about it. He said he would never go away from Christmas, and he went away from Christmas. So David C. Pack is not a man of his word when it comes to anything biblically speaking that he says, and that's all just proven out of his own mouth. So in creating that website, it helps create a hub of information for current members and former members, or people who are curious, or people who want to learn about this church that they might consider attending. So that's my target audience. And then one day I'm on checking my Facebook page, and I see a like by Jessica Brown. And I had known Jessica because I was in the headquarters congregation with her. We chatted a little bit. I wouldn't say we were like friends, but we were friendly, and we'd have conversations, and I knew who she was. And then I said, wait a second, are you gone? Because if you publicly acknowledge my Facebook page, you're going to get in trouble. And then she wrote me back and said, no, I left. And so then we immediately went out, had a discussion, and I said to her, well, actually, you wrote a comment, a really wonderfully written comment on the website, and I took that and turned it into her first article so that other people could see what she went through. And then I said, Jessica, you have a voice now. If you want to write something and put it on the website, I'll do it. On the next day, I got her exit story. The next day, like, she didn't have to sit and think about it. It just came right out of her. And so she was kind of the first one to really write as a former member, here's my exit story, and then she has inspired other people who have inspired other people, and now it's kind of taking off in that way.
I would like to say it was really well written. It wasn't like anger or saying bashing the church.
Right.
It's nothing like that. And I would like to take a step back in regards to Mark's blog, his website, and the Facebook page. What is different about that than other blogs and things that you see is that it is factual. Everything that is on there is basically, consider it like a documentary of all of the sermons that David Pack has, and then Mark goes through that, and you can see where he'll insert comments of different color of this was said before or comparing it to other things. So basically it's like a documentary. It's not making anything up. We've collaborated into a Google Doc to make sure any documents, anything that anybody can access, from property documents and so forth. And then it stemmed from the sermons to when Restored Church of God decided to purchase the $500,000 property and sell another property, and just a bunch of different stuff. So it's not a rant page. Some comments you'll see on there. But in general, it is basically it's like a documentary page, so that former members or current members can go on there and kind of see a history timeline. I didn't understand what the numbers were, 303 and now 304. You just see this continuation. After you understand, it's continually the same. And it is marked word for word what David Pack says, even the videos, including tapes now that you have access to. So that's where this whole website is. It's not a blog for people to just, put on factual things. It is down to the T, and that's what I commend you for. And that's what you found. And your exit letter was really well written. I think it made me feel, okay, this is what we've been talking about. This is familiar territory, but it's from another perspective, and it's also from a female perspective. What has the reaction been since you published your exit?
I would say it's been very positive. A lot of people, followed suit and, started sharing their stories. And, I've had several reach out to me and, personally thank me, for sharing. And it's just, I wanted my goal was to be an avenue of support for people who, were like me, on the fence, wondering, is this of God? Is it not? What's going on? So it's more like to let, people know, hey, I was there, I understand, and this is what I did, to prove for myself what was happening, was wrong. And I just, I want those people to know that they're not alone.
Now, how are you doing after you left personally?
So it's been an interesting journey. It has its ups and downs. In the beginning it was a little difficult because I was kind of alone for a little bit. I just kind of kept to myself and didn't really talk to anybody. But as I kind of started coming out of the woodwork, so to speak, not hiding behind the bushes anymore, I really feel a lot more supported, and you could say I'm doing a lot better mentally, spiritually, physically since leaving. So
now,
yeah,
what does it mean for you to have been able to connect with Mark and the groups that he's part of? It seems like a really great support system of people just to talk to.
Oh, absolutely. I'm very thankful for it, and I'm very thankful for what, Mark has done, because it's helped, a lot of people like me, be able to, take that big step and, say, hey, this is wrong. I can't, do this anymore. And it's also, we're all here, on a similar journey, so we can all support each other. So I'm thankful for it, and I just hope the momentum continues to build, and that, more and more will be able to, come out and say, hey, I was there, and, I need help. And
now, the journey for some people that have left is different for every person. For you spiritually, how are you feeling?
So my relationship with God actually has improved since I left.
That's awesome.
Dramatically, because I was told if I leave, God's going to depart from me. He's going to, withdraw his spirit, that sort of thing. Well, it's like quite the opposite has happened. Actually, I feel closer to God than I ever have in the past, especially in the past few years where I wasn't really even reading my Bible or, even praying. I just, now I feel like, I can go to God and, feel confident that I'm serving a God who doesn't author confusion, who's not, behind just strange prophetic theories. And it's been wonderful. So it's been a positive change for me, spiritually speaking.
I really commend you for doing as well as you are, and reaching out to other people to talk to. There's a lot of people who leave who they don't want anything to do with God or religion at that point. It's very, very hard. It's post-traumatic stress, everything, and the fact that you're going, and it seems like the decisions after you started to move up here and everything has just literally fallen into place with you. Yeah, I see you get a couple steps back, but you just seem to keep going forward, and you have some kitty cats too.
Yeah, I got two little rascals.
Now, we talked about a story, and you can explain as much as you want or as less as you want. That's fine. Mm-hmm. To get to the point that a couple of things besides the him calling himself a prophet and so forth, is the financials. And we talked about common and what common is for. And I'll have Mark explain that again real quick. But at one point in time, you needed help and you got no help.
Right.
Could you explain?
So common is the teaching that David C. Pack says was what the first century church was doing in the early book stages of Acts. All brethren, had everything common, which, people were pulling money together initially to build the church for the first century. And David Pack has taken that as a doctrine of God, that common is something that you owe and you have to pay. And that is any excess funds that you have, a spare house, car, artwork, collectibles. You're not to amass worldly wealth. You're to sell those things and give it to the church as much as you can possibly stand. So it's like a free will offering, except David Pack has now also tied it to salvation, which is a step beyond what I recall it being years ago. I don't remember, and maybe I just tuned that out, that there was a salvation element, but he's saying it's now one of the requirements for salvation. And so and common is what keeps the campus here in Wadsworth, that's across from Giant Eagle, going, because tithes and offerings do not pay for the overhead of that very expensive campus. It's common. New people come into the church, the ministers find out they have wealth, they kind of work on them, get the common out of them. And by, sometimes you just have a couple people writing $500,000, $250,000 checks every year. That's all you need to keep the campus going. So that's a basic concept of common.
Okay. And my past, attended church, and you run on hard times, you go to your church. I mean, they tell you to come to them, and it's not like I wanted to, but I had no choice. And you ran into a situation that you asked them for help, and they basically turned you down. Right.
So I applied for what is called third tithe assistance.
Okay.
It's it's actually a loan. It's not so third tithe assistance and third tithe loans are different. I actually applied for the third tithe loan. Just wanted to correct myself there. But I applied for that because I was going through some difficulties and unfortunately suffered some loss as a result. And I applied for that, and there was a lot of, questioning about the budget and such, which, things were obviously very tight. When you're going through, you have to give your first tithes, your second tithes, and then your third tithes. It can make things very tight. So it, it's like it got to the point where, just things were, and then there was the Feast of Tabernacles, which I didn't get paid for during that time. And then I got sick right after the feast. So I was like sick for maybe a few weeks or so.
Oh gosh, okay.
Yeah, I was like missing work here and there just because I had kind of I didn't have COVID, but I had like the post viral syndrome thing going. So it was very hard for me to keep up working. And then not to mention all the stress I was already going through as a result. So, all of that missed work made, put some holes in my wallet.
Yeah.
So I, looked to seek that help. And unfortunately, it kind of dragged out, with all of the questioning and, oh, well, if you don't put your your second tithe away correctly, so to speak, or if you, like, say, for instance, you mean to put it into this account, but it ends up going to another account instead, that's considered stealing. Which
okay.
I guess, was confusing to me because that, the second tithe was meant for was meant for the brethren to use for the feast. That's not actually, the part that goes to God. So, some things happened where I lost a little bit of it, and I was told, well, because of that, I couldn't get help. So.
And you said that it was a minister that was gone for a little bit, and then he came back, and then basically said no, and said to the fact financially cursed.
Yes.
Like, that doesn't make sense.
Yeah, under a curse, so to speak. And the sad part was I had family who was actually able to help me and ready to help me. But
you entrusted in your church that said they're there to help you.
Yeah, I told them, no, don't do it because I don't want to burden y'all, and I rather, go through the church if they have the means and the ability to do it, So it was.
Wait, so can I ask a follow-up? Because I hadn't heard of third tithe loan. I heard of third tithe assistance. And for people who are watching, first tithe is 10% you pay the church of your gross right off the top. Second tithe, you save 10% every year to be able to pay for yourself to go to the Feast of Tabernacles. Every 3 years, you have a third tithe, which is another 10% that you then also give the church that's supposed to go for the widow, the stranger, and the Levite for assistance in the church. So you're saying you wanted to apply for a loan, which means you intended to pay the money back.
Yes.
And they still said no.
Right. So, yeah.
That's a new one. I haven't heard that.
Yeah, so it's like, and there are other members who've applied for it and gotten it. So they give you money, with the intention that you're going to pay it back.
A loan.
Yeah.
So I would think, okay, you're under a curse. Now, this is my Antichrist brain working. If you're applying for a loan that's saying, I just need to borrow this money for a little bit and I'll pay it back, why they would say no versus flat assistance is we're giving it to you, you don't have to pay it back. Right. I'm actually still shocked that they wouldn't at least allow you to give you the money knowing you were going to pay it back.
Right. I don't know. It's just, it's one of those things that, to this day, it was like confusing, but
things happen for a reason, and you got through it, though.
Right,
that's the big thing, is you got through it. But that kind of opened your eyes as to church members are putting all this money into these different accounts, and then when you actually need help,
right?
That had to be obviously an extremely stressful situation compared to when you said about the fog story that you told me. Could you go into that? Because I'm not laughing at it. I'm saying it's just what you were going through at that time to give the audience an understanding of all this stuff that you were going through, and you were trying to be so strong. What made you finally break?
Right. So the fog story, and that actually backtracks a little bit, 3 years prior to, well, actually maybe 2 years prior to the financial thing happening. But that was, it was on December 24th.
Okay.
And we were told that Christ was going to be returning on Christmas Eve that day to blow up the holiday, so to speak. So we, naturally were kind of on the edge that today's coming, like, is something going to happen? And I go to work that day. I'm driving. I notice it's really foggy. And I just thought, it's kind of foggy, foggier than it normally is. Especially this time of year, it's kind of unusual. And I, just went to work, went about my day. It was just like, it's nothing.
Yeah.
And then lunch break comes around. I look at my phone. It's like close to 100 missed messages from a group chat I was in. And like all the messages were like all caps screaming, Christ is here. He's here to set up the Elijah. And, he's in that fog and talking to, Mr. Pack. And you're like, we made it. It was like, what? I'm just sitting there looking at it like, what's happening in the time, that I've, been working. So, and I'm just sitting there, but like part of me was like, is this for real? So I just kind of like wondered like, what is the meaning of this? So I drove home from work because they sent me home early because it was very dead, and it was just like, I'm going home because I can't think straight anyway. So I went home and I drove to the Giant Eagle and just kind of stared at the campus from there, and I noticed the fog was thicker over the campus than it was over the rest of the city. It was very unusual. And it was like, wow, is Christ really in that cloud? Is he there talking to Mr. Pack? What is he doing? So, it was like, it had me wondering. But then the next morning came, and, Christ hadn't returned. And I just kind of sat there like, okay. And it made me like, I had this like really startling like realization hit me. I just thought, wow, like a scripture like literally just came to pass right before my eyes. How they would proclaim, look, Christ is in the clouds, or look, he's in the hidden rooms, secret chambers. And I just sat there and I was so disturbed, but I just could not say anything because I knew if I said anything, I was going to get turned in or told I was an unbeliever. I'm doubting, David's teachings. It's just like I couldn't say anything. And I just was, from that point on, I just felt like even more uncomfortable than I had already felt as a result, of and then the whole, the fact that the getting dismayed by signs and wonders, and the fact that I got snared into that.
Yeah.
It was like, wow, I can't believe I let myself like temporarily think, wow, Christ is in that cloud. I was like, I got snared myself, so I felt guilty about it for a while. But
to add some color to the fog story, at the time, David C. Pack had been teaching a lot about Christ coming in a cloud, and he was even suggesting that it was prophetic fog. Now, the reason it was around the campus more than the rest of Wadsworth is because the campus is grass.
Right.
It's covered in grass, and everybody who has an open field knows the fog is thicker over the grass than it is over concrete. It wasn't biblical. It was just fog.
Right.
Now that you've been through the exit, you've been able to be out a little while, you've been able to connect with other former members and start to get on with your life, and you've been seeing Mark's blog with things continuing and it sometimes kind of getting a little bit more crazy. What is your advice to anybody that is possibly on the edge right now?
So the best advice I can give is to go in your Bible, go back to the foundational, scriptures that we always knew, especially focus on the scriptures that talk about false prophets and the office of the true prophet and what that entails. A true prophet is going to speak, the words that God wants them to speak, and they will come to pass exactly as they are, foretold every time. A false prophet, it will not be that way. So the best advice I can give is go in your Bible, prove all things, pray, study, reach out, for help if you need to, because there's a network of people, who are very much, there to help support you as you go through that process.
Now, what would you say to them if they're scared of coming out, that, they're going to lose everybody, that like a fire? I mean, they're scared.
I would say fear God and not man. Because, what man can do unto you, what does it matter what, a person thinks, or, what, if they're going to turn their backs on you. When it comes down to obeying God, put him first above all things. You might have to go alone for a little bit, but it shouldn't last long, with the amount of people, who are, coming out of RCG and in the same boat. So, but it's you're really never going to be alone. You've always got people.
Now that you're on the outside, how has it been for you going day-to-day life? I mean, you've been told and instilled fear for so long of what's going to happen on the outside. How has it been for you?
It's been going as smoothly as it's ever been. Actually, I would say it's gotten better. I'm still working, and I'm still, living in a nice, comfortable apartment. So it's I haven't, nothing in my life has fallen apart. My life is actually slowly getting better, especially the finances. That's actually getting a lot better. So, yeah.
Now, nobody coerced you into leaving.
No.
And nobody sent you anything into leaving.
No. It was something I came to, decide all on my own. Nobody influenced me. These were thoughts that I had, long before I came across Mark's website or, anyone else's, commentary. It was this was all me personally. I felt like this is something I have to do for God, in order to better serve God. I wasn't doing it because, so-and-so said you should leave, I was never that type of person. I don't leave because of other people's, influences or opinions. I more, follow what I believe God is, trying to, what direction God's trying to steer me in. And I felt like he was felt like I knew he was steering me towards the exit, and I had to follow that. So
that's amazing. And Mark, since Jessica's exit letter, how has it been for the website, and not so much the website, the people's reaction that you know of?
Yeah, Jessica was instrumental in inspiring others to have the courage to come out and tell their stories. And she was a direct result of two different people within the same day also wrote me and said, I want to do that too. And then another gentleman wrote me and said, I want to do that too. And just this morning, I got another email from somebody who wants assistance with that process. So it's been moving on and building momentum. And, I'm not doing this all on my own. And from when I started the website, it was not the Mark Sabrian show. I wanted other people to come forward because I can be discredited as, a disgruntled employee, and that's all he is. Oh, he just wants to complain. Satan's driving him. Okay, fine. But then when you have more and more and more people telling similar stories from different angles, like we had a 19-year-old, minister's daughter, he was a high-ranking minister in Restored Church of God for many years. When his 19-year-old daughter tells everybody what it's like to be a teenager, to be 13 and 14 and fearing the lake of fire, that breaks your heart. Are you going to sit there and tell, that's Satan-driven too? It's okay, you can discount me all you want, but you can't discount everyone. So the only way the website works and builds momentum is if people participate. It's a place for them to tell their stories. I have been funneling them into the support network that's growing on Facebook, and that was the brainchild of Kevin Denis. Kevin Denis and Jennifer Denis, he is the son-in-law, and she is the daughter of David C. Pack, and they have had that growing Facebook group that is a tremendous support system. There's people like Jessica who are very active with new people, and the big message is you're not alone. For years and years and years, you leave Restored Church of God, nobody talks to you, you're on your own, and those people had some hard times. But Kevin, and this was long before I left and long before my website, he thought, let's keep people together so they can at least communicate and support one another. And that's still growing. We actually joke now that the Facebook group is the largest congregation in Restored Church of God because we're way bigger already than the headquarters congregation here in Wadsworth. And it's a growing movement, and I'm all for find out from God, look in your Bible, prove it for yourself. You know, I document things and I may throw out satire, but it's really each person's individual journey. You can't be talked into the Restored Church of God. And nobody should try to talk you out of the Restored Church of God, because everybody who leaves knows they made the decision. You know, Eve didn't pull out of the church. Oh, my husband pulled me out. It doesn't work that way. Now, they can say that, but that's not necessarily true. Each person has their own journey, and the big message is they're not alone. And the biggest theme that I hear from everybody who leaves, yes, it's scary. What do I do? Where do I go? What's God going to do? But there's also an underlying sense of peace. Somebody walked out the door and said, wow, I was expecting to be worried about this, and I feel such a sense of peace right now. Now, if I were the devil, I'd want to be able to have the ability to instill peace in people, except that's not what the Bible says that the devil does. That's God's Spirit. That's God moving you. He gives you a sense of peace you can't understand, and that is a theme for people who leave and you don't expect it. Nobody told me I was going to feel a sense of peace. I'm sure nobody told you you're going to feel a sense of peace. Right. It's the exact opposite of what you hear. Mm-hmm. And yet when you have many, many people experiencing the same thing, there has to be something to that.
Right.
Well, I would like to thank both of you for being here. And you, Jessica, for coming in to tell your story. I know it's not easy for you because you're going in the public eye with this. But your story isn't one of hate. It isn't one of vengeance. It's your personal story of what you've gone through in your journey. And I think you're doing amazing. And as for a woman to another woman, I commend you for coming forward, because I know that there's, a lot of scare tactics that were put upon you to just stay in your lane and be quiet. And Mark's website, I really would suggest anybody check it out. There's constant updates on there. And I would like to reiterate, when Mark comes up with information that goes on that site, and yes, we talk, but there's a lot of things Mark is very, very good about keeping confidence in people and not saying everything. The private group that all the former members are in is strictly former members. I'm not in there, and I respect that. That is a safe zone for all former members, and Mark is very, very good at talking to people and saying, well, I can't really tell you who it is or anything like that in detail. Mark waits until he has permission for anything. If you're looking for somebody to talk to, seriously, go to him. Jessica, you're awesome in helping other people on there, especially from the female point of view, because I know that it is scary, but you've made it on the outside. Your stories of inspiration. I don't know why things happen the way they do. I don't, but I'm thinking that maybe both of you, this has happened for a reason, because in a short amount of time, the people that you have helped and inspired is amazing. So again, thank you guys so much. Thank you guys for watching this episode. Please remember that we also have previous episodes 1 through 7 on this. And again, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. Until next time, thank you.
You are watching WCTV, Wadsworth Community Television.